Good day, everybody. Thanks for coming along to our session today with our special guest, Rebecca from ZooMedia. What we're going to do is cover in the next bit under half an hour or so some insights into how ZooMedia is able to help transition their business into being a more agile agency. In terms of the agenda, we're going to start off with a bit of an introduction so that everyone knows who's who, or at least gets a little bit more background, particularly on Rebecca and Zoo. We'll then hand over to Rebecca. We'll talk about the background from the business perspective and the challenges that they were facing from an operational point of view. And then we'll have a look at what they were able to learn in terms of putting in place a solution. We'll cover some benefits that Rebecca and the team have been seeing, and also reflect on some outcomes before wrapping up with some lessons advice and any questions you've got. We're also recording today's session, so if you missed something during the call, don't stress. We'll be sharing the video with attendees afterwards. So you'll be able to replay or share this with other colleagues as makes sense for you. Cool. So I'll hand over to Rebecca for an introduction. Do you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Rebecca, as Geoff mentioned, and I work for ZooMedia. We are an interactive communications partner for the life science industry. Our clients are biotech, biopharma, medical device, pharmaceutical companies. We are founded in 1994, and we have a team of 16 employees with offices in San Francisco and Memphis, Tennessee. And I am the GM and have been here since 2001.
Great. And from the AffinityLive perspective, my name is Geoff McQueen. I'm the founder and CEO of AffinityLive. We're a San Francisco-based startup. It's focused very much on solving the problems that are faced by professional and service-based businesses, where we're trying to make it easier for companies to manage the work that their staff do for their clients. We were founded in 2009 off the back of some technology that we developed internally in a services business, so we understand the space really well. And we launched our product commercially in November 2011, which is probably about the time that we started talking to Rebecca, I think. So Rebecca, do you want to give us a bit of background in sort of how you guys were set up and what you do there?
Sure. When I first started at ZooMedia, and Geoff did a really good job of showing it, an image here, is we had 3 different systems, and maybe a little bit of a fourth one too, is we were using Salesforce for our sales team. AtTask was our project management system, and a lot of our project managers didn't like AtTask, so they were using Microsoft Project. And then we used QuickBooks for our finance. And all of those 3 systems were used in a silo. And so coming in, it was very difficult to find what was going on and know what each one of those groups were doing based on all of those systems not integrating with each other.
Rebecca, if I remember some of our initial conversations, you had a frustration where things would be exported out. So let's say you were doing your weekly or monthly sales reporting activities. You'd pull things out into Excel and then want to sort of edit them collaboratively as a team. And as soon as you start doing that, you sort of lose them in their source of truth, and it just became a bit of a mess where you weren't too sure whether you could trust the data that was supposed to be in your sort of most reliable systems.
Right. So the only way that we knew how to integrate it was exactly that. We would export it out of 1 or 2 or 3 of those systems and then merge those reports together in various ways. And you're right, Geoff. Once you start doing that, you start running into human error and manipulating the data, and you start looking at wrong reporting and then just errors across the board.
So quite a lot of frustration. And so in terms of the problems, how would you sort of sum them up, Rebecca?
I would say the one thing was the lack of integration. And a lot of it was the lack of communication and knowledge sharing. So between the departments, and you can imagine from Salesforce, a lot of interaction between a client and the account manager or the sales rep happens. And when you finally land that project, you turn it over to the production team. But there's a lot of communication that happens during that sales cycle. And it's hard to share that information in one meeting. And so integrating those systems together was a huge plus when we looked at AffinityLive. So huge problem was the lack of communication and the knowledge share between those. Also with individuals that were working outside of the system. So because people didn't like using @task, or they didn't like the project management system, or they had to export data in order to manipulate it, they were working outside of the system, and that doesn't help anybody when people are doing their own worksheets or Gantt charts outside of the system. Inconsistent reports, that doesn't help either when one person's running a report, or human error just naturally happens. Also, we were spending way too much time training employees. I know that when I first started, just getting up to speed with a number of systems that you have to just know on your first day, having to understand Salesforce and understanding @task, and then understanding QuickBooks, you have to be able to understand. It was too much training. And then timesheets. When we actually had to enter in our timesheets, then the finance department was exporting all those timesheets out, and they were using Microsoft Access to actually manipulate the data in order to run the invoices, and then they were uploading them into QuickBooks. So you can imagine just taking them out of @task, going into Microsoft Access, and then going into QuickBooks. There was definitely room for error.
Yeah. So you guys ended up building almost your own billing platform to make up for the kind of challenges and frustrations you had there.
Right. Absolutely.
Wow. Fascinating.
And then,
so in terms of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, and then the last thing was just visibility from, a target all the way to invoice. Again, there was no visibility from one target all the way from if we land that project or land that prospect to a project into invoice. There was no visibility across the board.
So you could have a salesperson who's really confident, as all salespeople are, putting in a big number for what the project was worth. The revenue recognition side of things might take a few months to wash through, and after all the moving parts and manual updates and spreadsheet and access database changes, you probably didn't end up with much confidence of what was coming out the other end.
Exactly.
Right. Cool. So we first, I guess, talked initially, Rebecca, just after we launched AffinityLive, and I think it was one of those interesting conversations where we were looking for some advice, and I think from the first conversation you sort of said, actually, we actually really want to buy this thing. So can you sort of tell us from your perspective what stood out and what makes this sort of platform a solution for you guys, or what you were looking for?
Sure, and I've been on the production side for a long time in my career path, and it really was one of the first systems that I saw that integrated truly from the start to the end. And I have used Salesforce for a long time, and I've used many project management systems, but it didn't integrate it from start to finish. And I know AffinityLive is not claiming to be a financial system, so I wouldn't say it will ever integrate, or maybe in the future, Geoff, you guys will integrate from the financial standpoint, but there is enough integration from the finance that our team is able to see the invoices that have gone out, which is enough information for the team on our end. But it integrates everything across the board. So the moment a target is a client that we want to go after, all the way to the project closes, and we know what invoice that project has seen. We know what contracts have gone out, what the client has signed, and all the communication leading from that target to the project closed. It's all within one system. And everyone from the account manager to the finance department and all the engineers in between and designers in between can see everything that's gone on within that project. And there's not separate access. There's not another login. People don't need to get trained on the system. It's one system that's integrated. So it solved a lot of our problems that we were having. The system did that for us.
That's great. And how important with your distributed team and the work that you guys do was it to have, sort of a platform that was web-based and also really configurable, like in terms of fitting business processes? Because it's all well and good to have a database in the cloud, but what were the things that made a difference for you guys there, or solved problems you were facing?
As far as it being web-based?
Yeah, web-based as well as some of that business process stuff that you guys really took to.
Well, being web-based was a must because we have 2 offices and then we have 3 individuals that are remote. So we had to have a platform that was definitely web-based. And I liked the fact that it was very configurable because not every business is exactly the same. But I think that the way the AffinityLive team approaches it was enough of a platform that it gave you the basics, kind of like the foundation, but it allowed you to configure it to fit your business needs based on whatever industry you're in.
That's great. So in terms of looking at some of the benefits, you sort of mentioned that integrated thing. So I think sort of one of the aspects that users like you guys have really liked is that you're able to see in one screen here. This is like a company or a client view screen. You can see all the stuff that's going on there, including all of the sales and projects and issues on the right-hand side. And then zooming in, you can actually look at a particular sales opportunity and see the conversation that's going on. And this is a project, for example, on this screen here, which is showing you all of the the work that's been going on and budget utilizations and stuff like that. And I think one of the other things that you guys really liked was the ability to be able to go through with particularly your maintenance and your support type stuff that you're doing for clients and be able to build for that really quickly. How were you managing the maintenance stuff before? Because obviously projects are kind of big and meaty and you can put the effort in up front, but what about the little stuff that you guys were managing?
Yeah, so a lot of it was done through email. A ticket was actually opened in @task, and through email, the account manager would email the design team, and they would go back and forth in email, and then the designer would have to go in and find the ticket in @task and would actually log in their time. So they were only using @task to log their time. And the great thing about AffinityLive is that right from the system, when the client emails, the email train or the email you guys call it a thread. The thread is actually in the system, so anyone can pick up the ticket. And how we have it configured is that any designer can go in and pick up the ticket. And because they're already in the system, they can log their time in the system. They can pick up the ticket in the system. They can close the ticket in the system. They can put notes in the system. So they're actually using the system for more than just entering their time, which was what the @task program was all that was used for.
So as a consequence, they're spending a lot more time using this thing to, I guess, run their work and be much more agile in their day-to-day rather than having to try and keep up with their inbox and then remember at the end of the day where they should go back and log their time, for example.
Right, exactly. I think that's one of the major benefits of AffinityLive is the email capturing that you guys have developed, is having that tool. We had an incident where an employee of ours actually had a baby, and as some babies do, they're either late or early. They never come on time. And it actually, it arrived 2 weeks early. And as much as we had planned, it came 2 weeks early, and he was off. And the great thing about the system is that we knew exactly where his projects were. We knew what his schedule looked like. We knew where he was at, and we were able to work and shuffling his time around because everything was right there in the system by looking at his schedule. And it was great.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great example. In terms of your users, I remember when we were doing some of our training, particularly some of your engineering or developer users were kind of skeptical about yet another system, and they'd kind of been a little bit burnt with what they were doing with that task. How have you found them in terms of adapting and being agile with things like, sort of timesheets and those aspects of what they do?
They've actually embraced the system really well. They like the interface. It's very user-friendly. We did training before it launched. We did training after it launched. And actually, I just did an internal training a couple of weeks ago.
Cool.
And I'd say once a month during our production meeting, I bring up certain things. Your team is really good about sending out blogs and updates. And so we always send out little things to our, to our team here and saying, hey, this is an update, or don't forget that this is a feature within the system, because you guys are always updating things. And I think there's always things that we can improve on and work on. So we're definitely focusing this month on scheduling and making sure people can update their schedules and understand how to use the scheduling tool to its fullest capacity. And you can see it on the screen here. Because I think that's a huge value add, especially when you have multiple people. This is huge vacation time right now. People out unexpectedly. It's really good to project in the future what resources look like and who's busy and who's not, especially when you start landing big projects and you need to start allocating resources. So training, I think, is a huge part.
I was going to say, when you get a call from that VIP client that says, hey, how soon can you turn this around for me? Being able to know what that looks like is kind of handy.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Cool. So in summary, what are some of the outcomes you guys have seen from this sort of approach?
So from a production standpoint, as I said before, the integration is big. So our designers felt like they never really knew what the sales team was doing or coming down the pipeline for them, because they're always the first ones that end up getting hit with the projects that are sold. So we have sales reports that are visible.
Cool.
Again, from the engineering standpoint, they may not know what's coming down or what's in the design, so they can look at a production schedule. So we have sales reports, and we actually look at them every week, and we update them within the system. So we don't do anything on spreadsheets.
Cool.
We do task lists are something that we definitely do, and we put together projects, and that kind of feeds into the schedule. So allowing people to actually own their schedule and task lists. And then the email capturing is really big as well. And I think that really helps, especially when people call in sick or people go on vacation. You don't lose that. You don't have to go in somebody's inbox to find out what that last communication was. It's captured right there, and anyone in the company can see what's going on.
That's all great. That's fantastic. And in terms of savings that you guys have seen, a lot of the productivity stuff is you can feel it, but it's harder sometimes to quantify. How are those other aspects made a difference for you guys in sort of maybe more of the hard-nosed areas?
Yeah, so from the invoicing standpoint, it is taking us 2 days now to get out our maintenance invoices, and before it was, when I started, they were going out the 10th of the month. And then we got down to the 5th of the month, and now it's the 2nd of the month. The second business day of the month. So they're getting out quicker, and it's because the employees are entering their time in the system, they're approving the time in the system, and then we're generating the invoices right from the system, and then they're pushing them right to QuickBooks. So there's no exporting, going into Access, and then going into QuickBooks. It's literally all done in one system. So it's integrated, so that's saving us time to getting our invoices out quicker. And then just the timesheets and integration, we're able to have everyone work within the system. So they're using the system all day long versus just going into the system to enter their time and going out of the system. It's a constant tool that people are in all day long.
Cool. And you're finding that they're doing less work for free because of that? Yes.
Because they're able to capture their time. And there's also, as people get into the system, you may also forget that you worked on something, and you can go to your to-do list or your task list, and you can see an email that came in and you may have forgotten about that, oh, that's right, I do need to mark some time or 15 minutes or an hour to that client that I may have forgotten about that you corresponded with, because it's right there on your to-do list or your task list that you forgot about. So you're less likely to miss those billable hours.
Which is always good for the company's bottom line, since your staff costs generally fixed overheads.
Right, absolutely.
Cool. So in terms of lessons and advice with making these sorts of changes, it sounds from what you're describing that it's been really worthwhile. What are the things you maybe learn and can provide advice to other folks who are following your footsteps in terms of advice and doing things in the future?
One thing that we did is I had a task force internally. I brought in an engineer and a designer and one person from our finance team. So I kind of had an internal champion team that we worked together before we launched it. And I think that's really important, especially if you're going to make a huge internal system change, because any disruption internally is going to always slow down productivity and efficiency, but I think in the long run, that'll definitely have more benefits. So I would encourage people to do that, and I would also encourage to spend the time on the front end, meaning setting it up, spending the time with Geoff and his team on training and support. We spent time with Geoff and his team sitting down on the configuration, making sure that we understood how it should be configured, and running some test projects and prospects through the cycle to make sure we have those rules and stop gaps that we wanted to have employees follow. Because once you start rolling it out, and if you don't have those in place, those actions that you want employees to do, it makes it harder when the system's already rolled out. So it's always important to do that kind of in the front end.
And one of the things that we've seen come up, and I think it was echoed a bit through your experience, particularly with those developer-type users who have a pretty high expectation nowadays because they can just jump online and use products like Facebook or Twitter or other platforms that are all free of charge and really easy to use. We've certainly seen a trend in what they call in technology the consumerization of the enterprise, where people are actually going out and choosing their own solutions, or at least have expectations that what they use at work has got to be at least as good as the stuff they use for free in their own time at home. And that combined with a bit of a Gen Y attitude has meant that organizations really can't force a top-down adoption. The mutiny is always too easy to go and do your own thing or to shake your head at it. So that's another thing we've found as well, is people needing to like to use products like this. It's no longer good enough to just roll out ugly SAP screens and teach people wacky keyboard combinations to be able to do data entry. So that's another thing we've seen sort of emerging as a trend in the industry too.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I guess this sort of wraps it up, and it's a great opportunity for questions if any of you have questions on that end. Feel free to use the Ask a Question feature in the control panel, or otherwise feel free to follow up with us afterwards. I've just got our contact details on the screen here, so if you do want to follow up separately, more than welcome to do so. I just had a question come through from Adam saying, can you talk more about support and maintenance and how you manage that in AffinityLive? What AffinityLive module do you use, and is it a combination of modules such as projects, issues, retainers, etc.? So I'm not sure, do you want to, I think that Adam is asking for your insight there, Rebecca.
So I think the system itself is all-inclusive, if I'm correct, but we use all of it. So we use everything from the prospects to maintenance to the projects to the contracts. So we use all of it from what we do. I think that was one of his questions. The second question was about the support. Is that a second question?
Yeah, how do you manage the support and maintenance? Because I think from Adam's perspective, he might be wondering, hey, if a customer emails in and says, hey, I've got to change something or fix something, should he be trying to create a project for it, or should he be using the issues module for that sort of support and maintenance work, those sorts of things. And I think knowing how Rebecca and the team use it as well, Adam, I think the key is that the request module really acts as the gateway for the organization. So they've got it set up so that when someone emails, for example, Webmaster at ZooMedia, which they've trained a lot of their customers to do, if there's something they need to change on a website or there's something not right, then that will actually create a request. And by using the notification feature in AffinityLive, it makes sure that all of the appropriate staff get notified of that, and then they promote that to become an issue if it's something that's more than just a one-line response or a quick kind of throwaway answer, and then manage that through the support and maintenance area. And I've also seen the team at Zoo be quite structured with their different departments. So the Webmaster team, for example, is into the digital sort of creative team, and when customers ask for things, they get routed down different business processes inside the issues module to make sure that the right people get notified. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rebecca, you guys actually set up a whole bunch of automatic email notifications. So when something did move through a certain phase, key staff members were notified that it's now been promoted to be an issue, and so-and-so's got control of it, and things like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Exactly. So it depends what type of request. It depends what type of request comes in, and that's why we're talking about the configuration. So if a request comes in and it needs to go down a design path, then the progression would go down design. Then the design team would get notified, and then someone who has time can pick it up. Or if it's an engineering request, the entire engineering team would get notified, and then anyone can pick it up. So it just kind of depends what request comes in, and then they can pick it up.
Great. Any other questions there? I've got another question that's just come through. It's a bit of a follow-up. So are clients on retainers and contracts for support, or are they just billed on a kind of monthly basis, on a post-billing basis, depending on the hours that they use? So how do you guys mostly work there, Rebecca? Are you guys more of a contract retainer shop, or is it one of those things that customers know if they email through and you fix things that you'll invoice them for them at the end of the month?
So we have a combination. I would say we do a lot of fixed price projects. So we run those through the projects. We have the issues, which is the maintenance, and we call those time and materials. So a request comes in and we bill them based on our bill rate. And then we have our contracts. So we have monthly billing based on our hosting fees that we have, and we also have our retainer fees. So we do use that as well. And I would have to say that the contracts is not something that we use as much as the maintenance and the fixed price projects as much. And I know it's something, Geoff, that you guys are talking about rolling out, new enhancements to that, which maybe you could speak a little bit more to. But we have all the contracts, all the monthly retainers, all the monthly or quarterly fees loaded into that contract section. So at any time we can run a report and we can invoice out of that, and hours can be applied towards it.
Yeah, and in terms of speaking to that point about things around the corner, we are doing quite a bit of work at the moment in terms of enabling our contracts module to handle more, I guess, non-time components, such as a monthly hosting bill, or maybe it might be a bunch of licenses that you have on a quarterly basis. So